Unsung Murder Ballads is a true crime podcast, and as such, we will be discussing topics that are disturbing, graphic, and often violent in nature. So this is not for children under the age of 13.
But you know this because you did start playing this episode. So here are some things you might not know about us.
We are going to be critical of mistakes made by both criminals and law enforcement.
We're going to express our views on things that you might not always agree with.
We will occasionally go on an off-topic tangent.
And we're going to use dark humor to express ourselves now and then.
So if you're easily triggered, this might not be the podcast for you.
However, if this is your cup of tea, then raise your pinky finger while you sip and join us for this week's horrific case, you sick bastards.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unsung Murder Ballads. This is episode 2 Revisited. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Madsters.
And yeah, Madster's back for her second episode.
So excited to be back.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back, because that first episode, while it was fun, I think you were very tired, you were subdued, so I want everyone to see your personality. I want them to get to know you better.
I'll bring the bubbles today, don't worry.
The bubbles. I'm picturing you in a room blowing bubbles everywhere. All right, so tonight we are revisiting our second recorded episode ever, which was Israel Keyes. And I know you don't know much about him, but our audience should, especially if they've listened to the original episode 2 recording, which is no longer available. So I did take off the ones that I didn't like. I took them down. So I apologize to anyone who's been out there looking for our earlier episodes. They needed to be redone, and we're working on it. We're getting there. So here we go. Here's your teaser. And I'm going to keep this one relatively short, but this is going to set the stage for you. So in 2012, 18-year-old Samantha Koenig was working at a little shack on the side of the road, which was part of like a coffee chain. And these little shacks were called Common Ground Coffee, and you literally had to get out of your car, walk over to this shack, and there was this one girl working alone most of the time, serving you coffee on the streets of Anchorage, Alaska.
No, it sounds dangerous. If you get robbed, then it's only one girl and, you could be taken. That's crazy.
Right, and they're literally on the side of the road, right on corners. And sometimes they're not right on the corner. You have to walk a little bit to get there. And it's Anchorage, so it snows, and sometimes the plows, like the pile of snow is really high. And unfortunately, that's what happened to Samantha Koenig on this night in question. She was working alone, and someone came up to rob her.
Oh, no.
She was taken from that Common Grounds little shed, and she disappeared. That's our teaser. So Samantha is the key pivotal moment to this entire case, which is why I decided to start with her. But she is, in fact, pretty much the end of the story. So I'm teasing you way out. So now we're going to dive in, because the person who took her was Israel Keyes.
Okay.
All right, so Israel Keyes was born in Cove, Utah on January 7th, 1978 to Heidi and John Jeffrey Keyes, and he usually goes by the name Jeff. Both his parents were these loner types, and they were both Mormons. They married in
Was he a Mormon?
Yes and no. His life is going to be very different as it goes, and as you're going to see, his parents are about to change. They're going to change their lives when he's a child.
Okay.
So they married in their early 20s, and they were both considered wholesome, God-fearing people who just wanted to raise their children in nature. I'm not one that really likes nature so much. I don't want to live in the woods, but, to each their own. That's all I got to say. I like the cities. That's all. They had 10 children, and all of them would be home births.
Wow. 10 children is a lot of children, and all at home. Wow. That woman is strong.
Well, and it's because they didn't trust hospitals, and they thought there were too many rules at hospitals.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but as a result of this, their children didn't have birth certificates, they weren't given social security numbers, and they didn't attend school. So officially, they didn't really exist.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. Now, at some point, while they're living in Utah, their neighbors began calling the police because this ever-growing family weren't sending their kids to school. And as a result, the Keyes packed up and they moved to a town called Colville in Washington State. Now, it was there that father Jeff here, he begins building their home himself, physically building this. He is literally chopping down trees and all that shit.
Wow.
This family would live in the woods while he's doing this for 7 years without heat, plumbing, or electricity.
They were off the grid.
Completely off the grid. And
Okay.
the children had no friends. They had a couple pets here and there, but there was no TV, no radio, no telephone. They were literally growing up learning how to farm and do things like that to basically to help Jeff out while he's building this home. It was there that the family decided to quit Mormonism, and they began attending a militia-based, white supremacist, anti-Semitic church called the Ark.
Oh boy.
So as Israel Keyes is getting older, he starts to display violent behavior. He basically hits 2 of the 3 big serial killer precursors. Now this is called the McDonald Triad, and basically the 3 things are bedwetting, starting fires, and hurting animals. And it's at this point that Israel Keyes is starting fires and hurting animals. They may not have noticed he was wetting the bed because he didn't sleep in a bed, from what I can gather. He's spending more and more time alone. And apparently he was upsetting his siblings and his friends to the point where his behavior was making them so uncomfortable that he realized he had to kind of stop doing it so blatantly.
So he did it more in like secrecy and privacy?
Correct. So initially he would just do and say things, but it freaked people out to the point where they were like, oh shit. So he caught on that he had to be more clandestine about it. So at 14 years old, Keyes began stalking people through the woods.
That's so creepy.
He didn't do anything to them, but he really enjoyed the fact that they didn't know he was there. And he started to realize how easily he could just make them disappear. Because they're in the woods. Nobody knows where they are. They don't even know he's there. So at 16 years old, he was arrested for shoplifting, which is the first known record of him because there's no birth certificate or anything like that.
Oh, wow.
So these next 2 sections that I'm about to talk about, they come from a book that was titled American Predator by Maureen Callahan. She did this amazing job researching this book, and she covers things that she truly believes were Israel Keyes. But the next 2 things I'm going to talk about are not 100% confirmed to be him. But her research is so well done that I lean heavily into agreement with her that they probably were. So I'm going to discuss those. In 1996, a 12-year-old girl named Julie Harris went missing. She was 5'1", 115 pounds, and a double amputee with prosthetic feet.
Oh, boy.
She was famous in her town for winning the gold medal at the Special Olympics, and she was last seen leaving her home on March 3, 1996. Initial suspicion fell on her mother's boyfriend, but he was never charged with any connection in her disappearance. But she was last seen with a man that was about 6 feet tall wearing a trench coat. And at this point in time, Keyes is about 18 and about 6 feet tall. 1 month later, her prosthetic foot was found in a nearby river. And in 97, her body was discovered only 3 miles from the town of Colville, which is where the Keyes were living.
Oh, no.
Then, in June of 97, Cassie Emerson, who was 12, also vanished. She was reported missing after the trailer she lived in was destroyed in a fire, and her mother's body was found in that trailer.
Oh, so this is lining up with the 3 triad that you were just describing about the arson and stuff like that.
Now, her remains were also found about a year later in the woods, ravaged by animals, also a short distance from the town of Colville. Now, police believe the same person killed Cassie and her mother, but neither of the 2 cases have ever been solved. Now, it's worth noting that Keyes and the Keyes family moved away around this time in 97. And the kidnappings and murders of girls in and around the town of Colville stopped. I think he did it, but later when he's caught, he doesn't admit to killing either of these girls. But that doesn't mean he didn't do it. He does say in an interview with police that the first thing he ever burned down was a trailer. So that lines up too.
That does line up.
So over the next few years, the Keyes family moved to Oregon and then to New York and then to Maine. So they're kind of moving all over the place. They're staying with family as they go. While in Oregon, Israel Keys decided that he would take a victim along one of the rivers there because this river had these remote bathrooms. They were kind of like outhouses, and they had these tanks underneath them because they used those to kind of keep them up on the water. So these bathrooms were literally over the lake, floating, I guess. It's kind of weird.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. So again, these tanks, the reason he chose this place is because these tanks that are keeping them afloat are big enough to put a body inside of. So he thinks that's what he's going to do.
Oh.
So he's hiding in these trees. And I don't know if he's on a branch over the water or if this is on the side of the river. This is unclear. But he's watching as numerous teenagers go by on these rafts. And then all of a sudden, this one girl that was part of a group that was kind of falling behind the rest of them is coming along, and she's all by herself. So he jumps out and grabs her. Now, he said this girl was between the ages of 14 and 18. And he forces her into the outhouse, he ties her up, and he rapes her.
Oh.
However, the girl kept talking to him the whole time he's doing it. She was telling him that he was good looking and he didn't need to be doing what he was doing, and that he was someone that she would date if, they had met in real life. And she's basically humanizing herself to him. And what she did worked, because after he finished raping her, he untied her and he let her go.
The fact that he let her go after he raped her is crazy.
And especially because in his mind, this was going to be his first murder.
Oh.
Yeah, so the fact that he did that was kind of crazy. Now, he would later tell investigators that he lost his nerve and couldn't do it, but investigators feel that it was her lack of fear that diminished his sadistic need to kill, because she was keeping perfectly calm.
Right.
Now, he did later say that he regretted not killing her, because when he got home that night, he kept expecting people to show up and, arrest him. So that was his first quote-unquote attempted murder. In 98, somehow, without a social security number or a birth certificate, Israel Keys joined the U.S. Army. While he was there, he was kind of this odd man out because of his upbringing. He had no idea how to relate to people, and he didn't know anything about pop culture. At one point, someone was talking about the band Nirvana, which is huge in the 90s, and he had no idea who the hell they were.
Right, because he was so uncultured, and he lived in the woods with no electricity and no power.
Radio, no TV, exactly. So, because he felt so isolated, he started drinking a lot. He eventually got orders to go to Egypt, and while he was there, according to some of the other soldiers he was stationed there with, something really weird happened. As a group, they had rented a hotel suite, and they hired a sex worker. And at one point, the sex worker went into a separate room with Keys, for some privacy. And they were in there for about 30 minutes when the woman came running out with Keys following behind her, trying to give her cash that she kept refusing. When the other soldiers asked what happened, he said that he had just thrown her around a little bit.
That sounds like he did more than throwing her around if she was running away that frantically and refusing his money.
Exactly. So that we don't know exactly what he did, but it's definitely not something she was okay with. So later, he would confess to this, he was stationed in Tel Aviv, and he also lost control of the woman there. And of course, she runs off. It's a similar situation. So at this point, because he's learning, he figures out that if he's going to do what he's doing, he would have to do it with strangers, people that wouldn't be able to identify him, so he wouldn't get caught. So in February, he was discharged from the Army, and he moved back to the U.S., and he moves in with a woman named Tammy that he had met online. Tammy was a half-black, half-Native American, and she lived on a reservation in the Pacific Northwest. There's some speculation that Keys started dating her as a sort of rebellious thing against his parents, because they were part of that group, the ARC, which was anti-Semitic, white supremacist, yada, 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 yada.
Right.
But it's tough to say, because he doesn't really talk about this too much. Now, Tammy would later say that she noticed right away that Israel Keys had a need for control. And she just sort of let him do his thing. If he wants to organize things, whatever. She let him have that control. And she very quickly became submissive to him. Now, they would have a daughter together, and their daughter was born on Halloween of 2002, which is an awesome day to be born, just saying.
I feel like that'd be such a great birthday.
So 8 months later, Tammy would be diagnosed with uterine cancer, and she would be forced to have a hysterectomy. The doctors had prescribed her with opiates for the pain, and she soon became reliant on them. And
Oh
it
no.
and it's at this point that Keyes takes complete control of raising their daughter, and he effectively started removing Tammy as a parent. He would literally act like he was a single father. In 2004, he takes their daughter and he moves to a different house on the reservation. Because remember, she's Native American. And he would eventually meet another woman online named Kimberly Anderson. And he would just take their daughter and he would move to Alaska to live with Kimberly Anderson.
Wow, so he up and left his like wife or girlfriend?
Yeah, the girlfriend and the mother of his child who's struggling with opioid addiction basically because of the meds she was given. And yeah, he just leaves her behind. Which
Wow.
to be honest was better for her.
Right.
Now, it should be noted that within the first few months after his move to Anchorage, Alaska, Keyes traveled throughout California, Washington, and even crossed the border into Mexico. But he never offered any reasons why he was doing it. So there's a lot of speculation. And again, we haven't really got into this yet, but once he starts killing, he has such a random nature to it that it's suspected that there may be victims of him in these parts of the country during this time.
Oh, that weren't like fully, the cases weren't fully solved and stuff like that. That makes
Correct.
sense.
Yep. During interviews, he never offered any reasons why he was traveling that way, but, he was. And at this point up in Alaska, he started his own construction company. It's kind of like an odd job kind of guy, and he's doing handyman work throughout the community. But later, we find out he's also traveling and robbing banks.
Oh no.
Yeah, this guy's fucking nuts. This next section that I'm going to cover are crimes that Keyes alluded to when he was talking to investigators later, but they fall in this portion of the timeline. So ranging from 2001 until 2012, Keyes told investigators that he left 4 bodies in Washington state. He said he killed one group as a couple, and he also said he used a Bayliner boat that he bought so he could dump the bodies in Crescent Lake in Washington state because it's one of the deepest in that state.
Oh shit.
So they tried to verify what he was saying, but there's not a whole lot they can do. They didn't find anything. So he's also maybe not a reliable source at the same time. He also said he killed 2 people at a place called Pinnacle Lake Trail, which is a national park. On that day, there were 2 couples that set out for a hike. One was a husband and wife, and the other was a mother-daughter. And the mother-daughter were Mary Cooper, who was 56, and her daughter Susanna, who was 27. And the other couple were total strangers, but they had met up on this trail, and they got to a point where they split and went in different directions. 4 hours later, as the husband-wife couple are returning back to where they had parked their car, they found the mother-daughter pair murdered and posed along the trail.
Oh, he just left them there.
And he posed them.
Do we know how they were posed?
No, unfortunately, there's no direct information on that, but so we don't know if it was graphic or whatever, but they were set up to be found, and yeah, they weren't left the way they were killed. So
Wow.
that day, Israel Keyes' cell phone had pinged in that area, so he had been there. But his cell phone had quote-unquote gone dark during the time of the murders. And what that means is he took the battery out so that it would stop sending transmissions and ping.
Oh, okay.
And this is something he did a lot, and they do refer to it as going dark. So when you hear me that phrase, that's what we're talking about.
Okay.
Then, in August of 2007, in Boca Raton, Florida, a man fitting Keyes' description was at a mall, and he held a gun to a toddler's head as he forced the mother to drive him and the toddler in her car to different ATMs to withdraw cash for him.
Oh my God.
He literally sat in the backseat with the child as the mother withdrew the money, and he's got a gun to her kid's head. So obviously you're going to comply.
That's so scary.
After she withdrew everything she could for that day, because, there's daily limits, right? He made her sit.
Right.
He made her sit in a deserted hotel parking lot as he figured out what the fuck he was going to do. He then made her get in the back seat. He zip tied her wrists together, and he put her head against the back seat headrest, and he zip tied her neck to that.
Oh, God. So he was like strangling her in a way?
Well, she did begin to panic because she couldn't breathe, and her face was turning red. And this person, presumably Keyes, loosened the ties and refastened them and asked her if it was better.
That is strange.
He then drove around for a while, every so often asking the woman and her kid if they were thirsty, and offered them water. And after 4 hours of this, he took her license from her and allowed her to make a phone call. She called her ex and told him that her car had broken down and she needed help. And then this man, again presumably Keyes, threatened her and said that if he heard his description on the news for this crime, he would come and find her because he has her license and she knows where she lives. He then told her to tell police that a black man did this to her. What makes it worse is that when she called police, she told them the truth, and the police didn't believe her. They literally looked at her and said, "No one would do that. That didn't happen."
That's crazy.
Now, months later, this unidentified woman is contacted by police months after this attack, and she finds out that a 52-year-old woman named Randy Gorenberg had the same thing happen to her months before it happened to this unidentified woman, except that she had been shot and pushed out of her car.
Wow.
And then 4 months after the unidentified woman's attack, another woman in the mall in Boca Raton had a similar crime happen to her and her 7-year-old daughter.
Okay, so there's a pattern going on here.
Exactly. So the woman and her 7-year-old daughter, Nancy Boccaccio, and her daughter Joey were found dead in their car with their wrists and ankles bound, and Nancy's head was strapped to the headrest. So police finally believed this unidentified woman's story.
I'm just surprised that she's still living and that the other woman who was zip tied to the headrest is dead.
Right.
Wow.
And it doesn't make much sense because he's not consistent on who he kills and who he doesn't kill.
Right.
Again, while the description of this person fits Keyes, it's not 100% confirmed that it was him, but he was in the area at that time. Now, one thing I haven't touched on yet is Israel Keyes would bury what he called kill kits throughout the country. He would literally be traveling in an area and bury a 5-gallon Home Depot bucket in the ground, and he would have zip ties, guns, ammunitions, bullets, knives, Drano, all this crazy stuff inside these kits, and he would bury them so that when he felt the need to kill while he was in that area, he would just go dig them up.
That's fucking insane.
Yup. Absolutely crazy. First off, how do you remember where the fuck you buried these things is my question. But
right?
With that said, this next thing we're going to talk about, the FBI feels very strongly in terms of Keyes being responsible for. There was a woman named Deborah Feldman, and she disappeared from New Jersey in April of 2008. And it was the same time that Keyes was traveling through that area. Deborah was a sex worker and a drug addict, and when investigators, after Israel Keyes gets caught, they ask him about her, he was surprised that they were asking about her specifically and told them that he didn't want to discuss that.
What? He didn't want to discuss that?
Yep.
What?
He would just be like, yeah, we're not going to discuss that. Yeah, he does this a lot through his interview. It's crazy. He did tell them, however, that he did leave a body in New York State, but he didn't go any further into that either. But even though he didn't confess to killing Deborah Feldman, investigators did find information about her on his computer after they seized it. So he probably
that's not
killed
a good look for him.
No, not at all. Not only that, but they found hundreds of photos of women and many searches that Keyes had done looking into people that were already missing. So, yeah, to me it sounds like he was like, oh, what's the status on this one? Blah, 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 blah. And he's basically kind of telling you these are probably his victims.
Right.
But unfortunately, all of that information has never fully been released to the public, so we don't know the names of these potential people. So then, on June 2nd, 2011, Keyes flew from Anchorage, Alaska to Seattle, Washington. He then takes another plane from there to Chicago, and he spends a couple of days in Indiana after renting a car. On June 3rd that year, the day after he arrived in Seattle, and my birthday that year, woohoo, 21-year-old Lauren Spearer went out for drinks near the Indiana University where she was a student, and she was never seen again. Investigators have been able to place Keyes driving through 3 different toll booths in the area that night. Now, when they asked him about this, about Lauren Spearer's disappearance, he responded with a laugh, and he said, quote, "That's how hard it's going to be for you guys to figure it out," unquote.
What the hell?
Yeah. Yep. Now, he didn't say it was or wasn't him, but he's clearly enjoying the fact that they have no idea how many people he's killed.
This guy's got numbers, man.
It's crazy. So soon after being in Indiana, Keyes drove up to New England to visit his brother in Maine. On June 7th, 2011, Keyes checked into a hotel in Essex, Vermont. He had brought some of his supplies with him, but he also decided to dig up one of his kill kits. A little after midnight on the 8th, Keyes ended up at 8 Colbert Street, the home of Bill and Lorraine Currier. He used a knife to pry open their screen door, and he was in their bedroom in seconds.
Wow.
He woke them up, quickly tied them up while they were disoriented, and after they were tied up, he asked Lorraine, "Do you have a gun?" And she was like, "Yes, there's one in the dresser next to my husband's side of the bed." That's how fast he did it. They didn't have time to grab a gun that was right there.
Wow.
So after he spent some time going through their belongings, he directed them outside into their own car, and he drove them to an abandoned farmhouse that he had seen earlier that day. He brought Bill inside first and tied him up in the basement. When he went outside to get Lorraine, she was already out of the car and running towards the road. He tackled her and dragged her back into the house.
Oh.
He used duct tapes to strap her to a bed and wrapped rope around her neck. And while he was doing this, he could hear shouting coming from the basement. So he returns down there to find that Bill has almost freed himself, and the two of them start fighting. Keyes then grabbed a shovel that was in the basement, and he struck Bill over the head with it twice.
Oh, no.
But Bill wouldn't stay down, and Keyes had to shoot him numerous times. After this, Keyes goes back upstairs. He raped Lorraine, and then he brought her to the basement to show her what he had done to Bill.
Oh, that's awful.
He then strangled her. He put both of their bodies in garbage bags and brought them to the corner of the basement where he poured Drano from his kill kit onto their face and hands. I'm assuming he did that to half obscure their identity, like identifiable marks, even though DNA is a thing. I don't know. He then piled garbage and wood on top of them so that they wouldn't immediately be seen, and he left. Now, the Curriers would be reported missing, but to this day, their bodies have never been found.
Wait a minute. So their bodies have never been found, but he said that we found out that trash bags were over in the corner and they never discovered the trash bags?
Right. He confessed to this. He's telling the police the details. And if he hadn't confessed to this crime, it never would have been linked to him. And we're going to get into why they haven't been found. That's going to come a little later.
Okay.
So now we're at the point we were when we started this episode. Samantha Koenig. She's an 18-year-old girl working at the Common Grounds coffee kiosks. I mentioned this is typically staffed by young girls working alone, but Samantha was the one working this particular night. She was a popular high school senior. She occasionally skipped school and took part in some recreational drug use, the marijuana, the devil's lettuce. She basically got along with everybody. And there were really only two important people in her life. Her father, James, who was known to be a seller of marijuana, and her boyfriend, Dwayne. Now, when I say that, it's important. I'm not throwing the guy under the bus. Like, I don't care if you sell weed, but it's an important part of why the police don't trust her father after all this goes down.
Okay.
So on February 1st, 2012, Samantha's working alone on a snowy night. There were large snowbanks obscuring that kiosk from the road, making it harder for people to see it as they drove by. Security cameras at the kiosk recorded everything that happened that night. Before I retell what happens, it's important to say that police initially assumed that Samantha had taken the money on her own and run off with it.
What?
Yeah, police are stupid.
That's so stupid. Why wouldn't you automatically assume the worst and that she was kidnapped, but you're going to assume she stole the money, really?
It's amazing how many times we talk about that on our episodes. Yeah. So in the video footage, which you can still find on YouTube, by the way, it has no sound, but you can watch it. Samantha's there alone when a man approaches the window, Israel Keys, and she begins making a coffee. Now, Keys cannot fully be seen on the camera, so you can see Samantha reacting to someone who's out of frame. But suddenly her hands go up, and then she leans over and she turns the lights off. She turns off the open sign. And then she empties the money from the register, and she goes into a kneeling position on the floor. And then she stands back up and backs away towards the window, and that's when Keys zip ties her hands behind her back. 2 full minutes pass, and I'm assuming nothing happens here because maybe the street was busy and people could see Keys, but after 2 minutes, he climbs through the window. Now later, he tells investigators that he initially was only going to rob the kiosk, and it was in the moment that he decided he was going to take Samantha as well. But regardless, in this video, you can see the 2 figures inside talking. And according to Keys, the conversation went like this. He asked her if she had a car, and she says no, that her boyfriend has it, but he's going to be picking her up later when the place closes. He asked her if she hit the alarm, and she says no. He warns her that he's listening to the police scanner in his ear, and that if he hears anything, he's going to kill her. He then asks her name, and then directs her out of the kiosk. And again, Keys claims that he had never seen her before this night. But police will later find information about Samantha on his computer, so it's possible he knew about her before he arrived. Now, interestingly, as they're leaving, Keys noticed a camera laying on the ground, and he bends down and picks it up. He literally finds a brand new camera that someone dropped on the ground.
That's so random.
But when he does this, Samantha tries to make a run for it. But Keys quickly tackled her, and as he's picking her up, he pushes the gun into her ribs, and he tells her that if she tries that again, he'll kill her. Now understand, there are people around. So he leans in, and he tells her to lean on him and pretend to be drunk, so that if anyone looks, that's why she fell and why he has to carry her. So they cross the road, and they get into his truck. And again, there are people around, so Keys opens the door for her and he's pretending to be chivalrous. But he tells her that he's carrying a .22 caliber pistol. Now, I'm going to assume you don't know much about guns.
I know nothing about guns.
A .22 caliber pistol is really small, and the bullet's small, the gunpowder's small, so like when you shoot one, it doesn't sound like a gun. It's a pop, so he warns her. He's like, if I shoot you with this, it's going to be kind of quiet and nobody's going to really realize what happened. So knock it off. And obviously her fear made her comply.
Right.
So they get into the vehicle and Keys tells her that he's planning to hold her for ransom and that he is going to let her go once he gets the money. But she tells him her family doesn't have a lot of money. But he assured her that there were ways to get money, and that's what his plan was, and then he drives away with her. A couple minutes later, as they're driving, they stopped at a red light, and a cop car pulls up next to them on Samantha's side of the truck.
She must have been like, hello, I need to get your attention, sir, over here. But like, she can't make any moves because she fucking has Keys next to her.
Right, and she knows if she tries anything and the police don't see her, she's dead.
Right.
So fear kept her quiet, and the light turned green, and the cops went one way, and Keys and Samantha go another way.
That's so sad.
At that point, Keys stopped at a place called Lynn Airy Park. He looped numerous zip ties together to create a longer chain, and he has Samantha lay down in the back of his truck, and he secures her to the seat belts and then covers her with a drop cloth. He then drove to Walmart because he intended to buy a burner phone to make the ransom calls, but decided against it because Walmart's well known for having really good security systems and cameras. So instead, this crazy man, in a way he's an evil genius, but in this moment he does something kind of stupid. He goes back to the Common Grounds kiosk where he took her and retrieves her phone and her car keys.
So he's probably going to make the call off of her phone.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense rather than going into Walmart. But still, I wouldn't drive back to the location you took her from.
It's crazy. It really is. After that, Samantha tells Keys that she needs to use the bathroom. So they go to a place called Earthquake Park, where he gives her enough slack on what he's tied her up with so that she can go behind some trees and bushes and relieve herself. Afterwards, they stand there at the truck as they share a cigar together. So at this point, from my idea, from what I think, Samantha's point of view, she must feel that she's going to survive if she cooperates with him. Because he's kind of being nice-ish. You know?
Right.
So Keys then realizes he's been driving around so much that he needs gas in his truck. And he stopped at a service station to fill it up while Samantha was in the back seat with a drop cloth over her. To me, the fact that he didn't get caught blows my mind.
Right? And he's driving around all these different places.
Right? With this woman just laying in his back seat with a tarp over her? What?
That's
Crazy.
insane.
So Keys then starts sending text messages to Samantha's boyfriend and her boss from her phone, pretending she's angry with them. Basically saying she quit, fuck you, don't call me anymore, like that kind of thing. And then he takes the battery out of the phone. So it was around midnight that he finally pulls the truck into his house. He tells her to stay in the truck and be quiet. As he goes to the shed, he sets up a tarp and a space heater. Because keep in mind, this is February in Alaska.
I can only imagine how cold it was.
Right? Fuck that. So then he comes back out, he blindfolds Samantha and brings her into that shed. He binds her hands, and he ties her up with a rope around her neck, and he secures that to the wall. He then gives her a 5-gallon bucket to sit on and tells her that if she needs to pee, she can use that bucket, which I guess at that point is no longer a seat. Just saying. He then asks her for the PIN to her ATM card and for her address. Because at some point, she had told him that her ATM card was in her truck, that she shares this truck with Dwayne, her boyfriend. So he gets her address and asks her for the PIN to the card. He then reminds her that he's listening to the police scanner, which he is. So if he hears anything about a girl screaming for help in his neighborhood, he would be able to get to her before police would arrive and he would kill her. He then turns on loud heavy metal music, which, here it is 2:30 in the morning in Alaska, but whatever, maybe the neighbors aren't close enough to complain. I don't know. And he then takes his girlfriend Kimberly's car and he drives to Samantha's house. Which, again, all this is crazy to me, just saying. So he uses Samantha's key to open the truck and he finds her ATM card exactly where she said it was going to be. It's at this point that her boyfriend Dwayne comes outside of the house and he sees Keys standing there at his truck.
Oh, no.
They lock eyes and Dwayne just goes back inside.
What? Oh, my God.
He just goes back inside.
That's crazy.
The only thing I can come up with here is that Keys was so convincing with his text to him pretending to be Samantha that maybe Dwayne thinks that she's cheating on him and this is like the dude.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but still.
Yeah, it's fucked up.
Wow.
So Keys takes off running because he has no fucking idea. He's like, shit, someone just saw me. Now, it's behavior like that on Dwayne's part that makes police suspicious of him and her father, James, after Samantha's reported missing. They literally think that Dwayne only said that to create some kind of alibi for himself.
No cameras on the house?
No, this is 2012. There weren't quite as many around back then.
Yeah.
It's also Alaska, so I don't know.
Right.
So at one point after Samantha's missing persons is out there, the police decide to stop by their house, like Dwayne and James. Like they stop by the house because they want to see how they're going to react when they don't know police are coming. Because as I said, police are suspicious of them after Samantha is reported missing. And what ends up happening is they're talking to Dwayne at the door. He kind of slid through the door without opening it all the way, like too far, so that they couldn't see in. And he stood on the porch and talked to police that way. So that made police super suspicious. And then they asked if they could speak to James, and Dwayne slides back through the door the same way, and James comes and he does the same thing to step out on the porch.
That's weird.
So the police are suspicious of them, but I think it's probably because they had a stash of weed right there that they were maybe prepping for whatever, sales. And then they were...
Oh, and back then it was illegal. Okay.
Well, it's still illegal in Alaska. It's only illegal in some states. Yeah. It's not legal in every state. It is in Massachusetts, but not every state. So again, that makes them even more suspicious of these two. So even though Samantha was eventually reported missing, they don't trust that the father and boyfriend don't have anything to do with it.
Right.
We know because we're talking about Israel Keys. So back to him. After he left the truck with the ATM card, he had to go back to Samantha because he couldn't remember the PIN number that she had given him. So he has to ask for it again. This time he scratches the number into the card and he goes out to an ATM and he tests it to make sure she gave him the correct number, which she did. After he comes back, he goes into his house and he makes himself a glass of wine and he brings some water out to Samantha. At this point, she asks him if everything's going okay, referring to the ransom demands. And she asks if he's reached her father, which he tells her he has. He then releases the rope from the wall and he cuts the zip ties that he used around her wrists. But then he immediately restrains her again using the rope. And Keys later said that he believes this was the moment Samantha knew she was going to die.
Why would he untie her and then tie her back up again?
I think it was to reposition her. You know, he then raped her twice.
That's so sad.
And when he finished, she asked if he was going to kill her and tried talking him out of it. But he said he then put on leather gloves and strangled her, and he also stabbed her.
Oh, God.
At this point, it's the early morning hours, and Keys goes back into his house, where he wakes up his daughter, because they were leaving that day for a 2-week cruise.
So he's just going to leave this body in the basement, and him and his daughter are going to go out on this cruise and try and forget everything. Okay.
Yeah, and it's not in the basement, it's outside in a shed, but yes.
Okay.
But after waking up his daughter, he returns to the shed, he rolls Samantha's body in a tarp, and then hides her remains inside a cabinet. He turns off the space heater, and he double-locked the doors on the shed, and at 5 a.m., Keys called a cab to the airport. Later, when investigators asked him about this, he said he wasn't concerned about getting caught at this point because it was Anchorage, it was 20 degrees out, and he had been listening to the police scanner the whole night, so he knew that no one suspected anything. He also said that if someone did see his truck driving around, it was one of the most common trucks out there. And that, with the snow, the fact that it was snowing, removed any tire tracks from wherever he went, and he knew he didn't leave any DNA or fingerprints. So he wasn't concerned.
Yeah.
On February 2nd, 2012, Keys and his daughter flew to Houston. There, he rents a car in Houston, and he drove to New Orleans because the cruise was leaving out of there on February 6th, and they were going to be gone to the 11th. So to understand this, he went down 4 days early, landed in Houston, and he put 2,847 miles on that rental car.
Wow, that's a lot of miles to sit there and put on a rental car.
You're right, that is a lot of miles to put on there, but it's only a 350-mile drive from Houston to New Orleans. So he put on a lot of extra miles.
Okay.
This goes back to, we're not sure how many bodies are out there.
Right.
Which is crazy. After the cruise, he and his daughter come back and they stay with his mother in Texas. And on February 13th, Keys left a note for his mother that said, "Gone to fix the window and find a place to hide my guns."
That's such a weird note.
Right? So his mother said that the comment about the guns wasn't unusual because apparently within their entire family they owned guns and they constantly left them in different places. Which would sound
strange.
Right, it would sound weird on the surface, but apparently, and I'm not going to go too deep into this, but the Keyes family is part of a cult.
I kind of figured that when you were saying the anti-Semitic white supremacist church or whatever they were going to. I figured they were joining a cult at that point.
Right. Well, this is a different one. This isn't the Ark, which was what he was in as a kid. This is a cult that's kind of more like the Davidian branch with the Waco, Texas and all that stuff, where this group owns guns and they distrust the government, that kind of thing. But we're not going to go too deep. We're not going to go too deep into it because it's not relevant to him.
Right.
So at 8:05 a.m. that day, the family who had like this group text thing, they got a text that showed a message telling them that Israel Keyes, like if someone sent a message to him saying that he could bring his guns to a particular place. Now, in the book I read, this was redacted, so we don't know exactly where, but he didn't respond to it. Later that day, he responded saying that he was stuck in the middle of nowhere in the mud. And another family member says, well, we'll come get you, tell us where you are. And there's no response from him after that. So then on February 14th, Keyes sends a text that says he's out there in this town called Claiborne, which is about an hour away. And the whole family jump in this vehicle and they drive out to find him, but they can't locate him. These family members literally slept in that vehicle in a parking lot at a shopping center waiting to hear back from him. Which I have to, I was going to say that's incredible dedication because it's only an hour away. I'd have gone back to sleep in my bed, just saying.
Yeah.
At this same time, in the early hours of February 15th, a man named Jimmy Tidwell is last seen in Longview, Texas, 2 hours outside of Dallas. He's a 58-year-old man. He's married. He has 2 children. He worked at the same company for 10 years and was very punctual and reliable. He had no enemies, no dangerous pastimes, and no criminal record. He's literally just an average guy, but when he went to work, every day he had this white hard hat that he wore for his job. Now, for the record, where he was, Longview, is 3 hours from where Keyes was claiming to be in Claiborne, Texas. Later on the 15th, Keyes would call his family, and apparently he was just on the other side of that mall where they were sleeping, supposedly. Now, his family said that when they saw him, he was a mess, and a lot of what he was saying didn't make sense. He claimed that he ran out of gas and that his credit cards were frozen, that he had no cash, he hadn't eaten, and he's kind of being crazy, but even his family said this wasn't like him. On February 16th, the next day, Heidi, Keyes' mother, bought 2 plane tickets for him and his daughter to return to Anchorage. Keyes then left the house that day, and it was gone for much of the next day. During that time, in Aledo, Texas, Keyes set a house on fire in that town to distract law enforcement. He then went and robbed a bank in Asleth, Texas, which is about 30 minutes from where he set that fire. So while
he's causing a lot of destruction, fires, killings, he's got robbing banks.
It's crazy. So while police and fire departments are moving towards this fire, he walks into a bank wearing a white hard hat and the same hair as the missing person Jimmy Tidwell had, and robbed this bank.
Oh, no.
Now, later, when asked about this, he said he wasn't wearing a wig during the robbery and that, quote, getting real hair was free if you took it, unquote.
Oh, so he took it right off his head. Oh, God. That sounds awful.
That's the implication, yes. So Keyes never confessed to the murder of Jimmy Tidwell, and to my knowledge, they've never found his body. But I don't see it being anyone else.
Right.
So after that robbery, Keyes later returned home to his mother's house where he gave her $900 in cash to reimburse her for those plane tickets. So gee, I wonder where that money came from.
Yeah, I wonder, because he was just broke.
So during this time, police and the FBI in Alaska keep looking into James and Dwayne as possible suspects for Samantha's disappearance. Now, James, her father, was very vocal with the press about her disappearance, asking for her, even raising money within the community to help pay any ransom demands that might come up. Now, the town's donating money to help find Samantha, and it's everywhere. So when Keyes arrives back in Alaska, he sees it everywhere, and he goes to the shed and checks on Samantha's body. Due to having other things to do, Keyes doesn't do anything with her remains for a couple of days. On February 20th, police finally see, this is the crazy part, it took them all that time to dig through all the security footage of Samantha's abduction at that coffee house. They had no idea. They thought she just ran away with the money. It took them weeks to see the footage of her being abducted.
Damn.
Fucking ridiculous police work. On February 21st, after he brought his daughter to school, Keyes took that shed apart from the inside out. He dismantled the cabinets, the shelving, he took the lights down. He left Samantha's remains in the lower cabinet, but chopped everything else into firewood. He then unrolled her body, which was still wrapped in a bloody sleeping bag that he left her in, and he emptied her out onto a large plastic sheet. He then went through her purse, and he kept some of her makeup and her cell phone. He then waited until 2 a.m., and he burned the tarp and everything else Samantha had come into contact with. Still inside that shed, he hung Samantha's body up, lifting her arms up over her head to thaw her out.
Oh, she was frozen.
Yeah, it was February in Alaska.
Yeah.
Yeah. Keyes admitted that he had sex with her corpse.
Oh, that's so gross.
Now, he lost track of time. So all of a sudden, there's a knock at the door, and it's his daughter asking him if he's going to come inside to have breakfast.
Just knocking on the shed door?
Yep, just knocking on the shed door. Hey, Dad, it's breakfast time. You going to come have breakfast? While he's got a corpse hanging there.
A dead corpse.
Yep.
Oh, God, that's awful.
So after he cleaned himself up, he helped his daughter get ready for school. Then he went out and he bought a Polaroid camera, a foam sled, some tote bags, a sewing kit, some fishing line, and he finds a newspaper for the Anchorage Daily News dated on the 13th that was in a dumpster. He later said that he used the newspaper from that date because on that day he wasn't in Alaska, and he thought that would help kind of create an alibi for himself. And you'll see why in a second. He then spent hours applying makeup to Samantha's face and arranging her body for photos.
Oh.
He had to use tape to pull at her face so that it didn't look so slack. And he needed to kind of bring it back to life. And he used the fishing line and the sewing kit to sew her eyes open.
Oh, God, that's awful.
He said taking photos was harder than he thought it was going to be because he had to hold her head up while he took these photos. But he eventually got the photos, and he scanned them into his printer, he printed them, he cut out parts of the photo that had anything that would identify him or where it was, like a tattoo or something, and then he scanned it again. Now, he had been paying attention since he got home, and he knew that James Koenig, her father, had raised almost $30,000 to help find her.
Holy shit. That's a lot of money.
Yep. And he told investigators that the reason he kept Samantha's ATM card and had tested the PIN was for the ransom. Now, he would later claim that he didn't know that the card could be tracked. And obviously that's important.
Oh.
So using a typewriter and latex gloves, he typed up a ransom letter. He then photocopied the letter, put the copy of the letter in with the photos in a Ziploc bag, and then he put that bag inside another bag. And at 6 a.m. on February 24th, Keyes drove his girlfriend's car to a place called Connor Bog Park, where he tacked the ransom note on a community board there. Now, this is 6 a.m. At almost 8 p.m., he uses Samantha's phone to call Dwayne. I'm sorry, he sent a text. He didn't call. And it says, Connor Park, sign under pic of Albert. Ain't she purty? And then he removes the battery from the cell phone because, he is kind of smart that way. So Dwayne and James call the Anchorage police and they rush to Connor Bog Park. They arrived 15 minutes before police did. And they found the picture and the photos and all that stuff. They're looking at it, and in the photo, there's Samantha. She has duct tape over her mouth and chin, and she's looking at the camera, but her head is being held up by this muscular arm. Now, they can see a copy of that newspaper in the photo showing the date. And most of the people, and police in particular, assumed that that was to show proof of life, like she was alive on the 13th. But one FBI agent wasn't so sure that she was still alive. But most of them are going with that she's still alive. So along with this proof of life and the pictures, there was a ransom demand of $30,000 that Keyes wanted them to put in Samantha and Dwayne's bank account so he could withdraw it. And if they complied, he would return Samantha within 6 months.
6 months? What the hell?
Well, Keyes also alludes to the fact that they were traveling, that she was in the desert and blah, blah, blah. So he basically wanted them to think that she was traveling around being sex trafficked, and that's why it might take a little bit of time to get her back to them.
Oh, that's so gross.
Crazy. So this was the moment that finally Samantha went from being a missing persons case to a kidnapping case. And investigators knew that if they put all the money into that account, or some of the money in the account, they could track where and when that money came out. So Keyes went back to that shed, and he dismembers Samantha's body over the course of 3 days. He then drove out to a lake, which was about a mile away from where he lives, and he pretended to ice fish. He literally, cut a hole in there, built up this little shack that hides what you're doing and keeps you from the wind, and he ice fishes. And while he's in there, he's dropping parts of her body through the hole in the ice into the lake over the course of days.
This is awful.
Honestly, though, it's brilliant.
For a serial killer, yeah, but it's still really sad to think about.
It's fucked up, I agree with you, but it's such a brilliant way to do it. Because to keep from having too much attention brought to him, he did it over days where he brought only a little bit of it at a time. And he would sit there and just do it a little bit. He would go out during the day because other people were there. I mean, realistically, you just look like you're ice fishing.
Yeah.
It's fucking crazy. On the day that he lowered the final part of Samantha's remains, he then just sat there and leisurely fished for the rest of the day as if it was normal as anything else. Because he's a psychopath. So during this time, the FBI advised James Koenig not to put the entire $30,000 into the account. They said that by putting less money in there, the kidnapper might reach out again and they could get more information on how to catch him. So on February 29th, James put $5,000 into that account. And only 4 hours later, someone attempted to withdraw $600, but couldn't because the limit was only $500. So 2 hours later, $500 came out at an ATM 6 minutes away from the first attempt. And a half an hour after that, which was after midnight, another $500 came out from a different ATM. But both of these were around the Anchorage area. So police, they knew someone in Alaska was accessing this. But they continued to suspect her father, James, for a couple of reasons. First, they thought it was too coincidental that the exact same day the money went in, some of it came out. And the second was that only someone who didn't often use ATMs wouldn't know that there was a daily limit. And they knew that James, who sold weed, which is a cash-heavy industry, might not have known that. So they continued to suspect him.
Yeah, they're looking at the wrong guy.
Right, and a lot of podcasts, when they do this, they don't tell you Israel Keyes' history until after they talk about Samantha Koenig's disappearance, because they want you to think her father and her boyfriend might have been part of it. Personally, I'm like, yeah, skip all that.
Right, give me the story straight up.
Right, that's how I like it. So unfortunately, the camera footage at those ATMs weren't very good because Keyes was smart enough to wear a mask, and it was too dark and grainy and, whatever. They couldn't get anything from him. But then nothing happens for a number of days. And what police didn't know was that Keyes had traveled back to Texas for a family wedding. So on March 7th, suddenly $400 is withdrawn from an ATM in Wilcox, Arizona. An hour after that, the card was used again in Lordsburg, New Mexico. So the FBI are looking at this and they're seeing it, and they're seeing the path that someone is driving from Arizona to New Mexico. And they send out an all-points bulletin to Los Angeles, San Diego, Phoenix, El Paso, Albuquerque. They're trying to cast a wide net. They're like, be on the lookout for this guy. It's at 6:30 a.m. that same morning that they sent that out that a former Texas Ranger and state trooper, Steve Rayburn, saw the report. And he's looking at it, and then all of a sudden Samantha's ATM card is used in Humboldt, Texas, and then again in Shepherd, Texas. So Rayburn contacts the FBI, and he's talking to them about it all, and they tell him that on one of the ATM footage, they can see a white Ford Focus in the camera footage. So Rayburn, looking at a map and seeing exactly where this trail is leading, he's looking at how all these highways intersect at a town called Lufkin, Texas. And he's like, you know what? I know someone down there. I'm going to send him a message. And he contacts a guy named Brian Henry, and he tells him to be on the lookout. At the same time, Rayburn reaches out to an FBI agent named Deb Ganaway, who's in the offices in Texas. And they meet up to discuss what they can do to catch this guy. So at 11 a.m. the next day, when Rayburn and Ganaway are at this meeting, Officer Brian Henry calls Rayburn because he can see a white Ford Focus at a hotel near US 59. So this Texas state officer and the FBI agent Hanaway jump in their car, and while they're driving towards the hotel, they can see Keys getting into that Ford Focus and driving away from the hotel. So they kind of get behind him, and they were able to pull him over because when a light turned green, he went 2 miles per hour over the speed limit when he first started. So they pulled him over for speeding.
2 miles per hour. Such a funny excuse.
But you know what? It works, right?
Right.
He's pulled over and he's kept there for everyone to arrive. And after finding out that he's from Alaska, and hey, someone was kidnapped in Alaska, they arrest him while they searched his car. And while searching the car, they found in the vehicle, whether the trunk or the seats or whatever, they find rolls of $5 bills and $10 bills, various backpacks. They found porn DVDs, a hooded sweatshirt with shooting glasses in the pockets. They find a gray cloth mask, and this is pre-COVID, so that wasn't normal back then. They found a Samsung cell phone with the battery and the SIM card removed. They found a handgun, binoculars, headlamps, and a ski mask. And most importantly, in his wallet, they found Samantha Koenig's license. Idiot, for the record.
Right, because he's just carrying it around, and then the cops pull him over, and then they find it, and yep.
Yeah, how did you get this? As smart as he is, he's kind of stupid. So after being arrested and returned to Alaska, Keys agreed to confess, mostly because he overestimated what the FBI already knew about him and what he had done. He thought they'd be able to piece it all together anyway, so he just confessed. And the sad part of the story is the police knew very little. Investigators that had the experience, they knew they were going to have to do this interrogation very carefully, because if they tipped off to Keys how little they actually knew, he would stop talking.
Yeah.
Then enter the asshole. There is a guy by the name of Kevin Feldis who worked for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Alaska, and he basically forced his way into these interviews. He had zero experience interviewing suspects, but he used every ounce of his political clout to not only be present during the interviews, but to lead the interviews. As a result, Feldis missed cues and giveaways that other, more experienced officers in the room saw, but they couldn't say anything because they couldn't tip off that they weren't all on the same page. And they couldn't tip off how little they actually knew. So Feldis here almost fucks the entire thing. During the interviews, Keys initially said that he wanted the death penalty off the table for his confession and his cooperation, but he later changed his mind. He would change it and basically say that he only wanted 2 things. One was that his name be kept from the media for as long as possible to protect his daughter. And that the other was that he wanted his execution date within a year if possible.
I'm like, okay, I understand the fact that he wants, like, his daughter not to find out all about this, But why would he want his execution date in a year? Like, why is he sitting there saying he wants to be executed now?
Because he doesn't want to spend life in prison.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Over many interviews, Keyes confessed to everything that we've already been discussing, especially regarding Samantha. Once he told them where he disposed of her body, the FBI brought in a dive team. There was a guy named Bobby Chacon, and he was called up to Alaska. He had been with the FBI dive team for over 20 years. And by noontime on February 2nd, his team went to work in that lake, and by 7 p.m. that night, they had found and removed all of Samantha's body from the lake.
Wow.
It was after that that Keyes told investigators that he had a lot more to tell them. Over the course of the next few months, Keyes would tell the FBI about the couriers, about his bank robberies, and about bodies in Washington state. He began explaining everything about his kill kits and the random ways that he stalked and attacked people. He told them that there was one night that he just decided he wanted to kill a couple, and he went out looking for one. He said he went to some Lover's Lane type of location, and he saw a couple sitting in a car, and he was ready to go over and kill them when suddenly a police car pulled in. Now, the officer was alone, and that officer approached the couple in the car, and Keyes decided, you know what? Fuck it, I'm going to kill the cop too.
Oh!
He's like, why not? As he was making his approach, a second cop car pulled in, and that's when Keyes decided that this was too much for him, and he left without hurting anybody. And this is the problem with Keyes, is he's so random that this is why he was never on anyone's radar. He's traveling the country, he's doing these things in different states, and sometimes he's taking someone from one state and dumping their body in another state.
Wow.
Another problem with Keyes that he never gave investigators the full story on anything. He would say things to them like, I don't want to talk about that right now. Kind of like what I said with the sex worker that he took from New Jersey. He's like, I don't want to talk about that right now. Like, that's what he did, because he knew he was stretching this out, because he liked the game. He was in control. After he told them about the couriers, that couple he abducted and killed in Vermont, he kept insisting that he wanted to be kept updated on when they found their bodies. He wanted to see the photos. The problem was Go ahead.
That he wanted to see the photos.
Yeah, he's fucked. I mean, it goes back to, that's how psychopaths are. So the problem was the FBI couldn't find them. They knew they were missing, and they knew the general area where this farmhouse was supposed to be, but at some point between when Keyes left them there and when the FBI was looking for them, that farmhouse had been demolished. And whoever had demolished it either didn't see the bodies or didn't report finding the bodies.
Wow.
So they didn't have anything to report to Keyes. So when he learned about that, Keyes was stunned. He literally looked at them and said something to the effect of, so I told you all that for nothing?
Wow, that's crazy he said that.
So on May 5th, 2012, while in court, Keyes made an escape attempt. Yeah, he didn't get very far. He pretty much was tackled within 5 feet from where he started. But when investigators asked him why he tried to escape, he literally said, well, I'm the bad guy. Of course I'm going to try to escape.
That's silly.
Now, in Vermont, because the FBI are looking for the couriers, the news media are starting to pay attention. And some reporter figured out why. And on July 18th, they reported that Israel Keyes had been arrested in connection with that disappearance. And it was all over the news. When Keyes saw that on the news, he was not pleased, because he told them he wanted his name out of the papers.
To protect his daughter.
Exactly. Sometime after 10 p.m. on December 1st, 2012, Israel Keyes killed himself in his cell with a razor blade and a noose.
Oh. How the hell did he get his hands on that?
That's a good question. He tied the noose around his neck and his ankles and tried to strangle himself by stretching out his legs. But it was actually the blood loss from the cuts on his wrist from the razor blade that killed him. Now, FBI had warned the prison to make sure that he couldn't access any kind of razors and to constantly be on the lookout for him. But there he was, dead. He had also drawn 12 skulls in his own blood with the words, "We are one," under them. He also wrote wrote the word Belize, which is the small island country.
Right. So, do you think 12 skulls represented 12 people that he killed, and now he's saying we are one because they're all dead?
That's what most people think, yes. That he has 12 victims, yep. And investigators think that he wrote the name Belize down there because he may have had victims there as well.
When he went on his cruise?
Either that one or a different trip, yeah.
Oh.
Now, his death leaves a lot of unanswered questions, and the nature of how he chose his victims and how he traveled the countries leaves a lot of speculation as to exactly how many people he abducted and killed and where their bodies might be. Now, the FBI did release an account of his travels and descriptions of his rental car because they're hoping that law enforcement or armchair detectives at home can look at things and try to piece things together because they want you to know where he was, when he was there. Did someone go missing? Were there John Does found? That kind of thing. I actually had printed that up originally. It's long, and I don't have the time to to do all that. So
yeah.
But as we reach the end of this, the shadow of Israel Keyes falls across every unsolved murder and missing person case in areas where he traveled, and we may never know the full scope of everything he did. And that is the case of Israel Keyes.
He's fucked. He's fucked. That's crazy.
He's one of the most notorious serial killers in U.S. history, yes.
Wow. Is his daughter still alive and well today?
She is, but out of respect for her privacy, I didn't try to look her up or anything like that. So
No, that's okay. I completely understand that, but I was just curious on like how she's dealing with this all and whether she's dug into this case or listened to podcasts like us now talking about it and stuff like that.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't really dig too deep. I just don't, just in case, so, but I don't know.
Yeah, definitely respectable.
Yeah. I mean, I hope she's able to find some peace with it all. My guess is she's probably not still in Anchorage, but I really don't know. All right, everyone. Thank you once again for joining us. And thank you, Madster, for joining me again for this episode. I appreciate you a lot.
Yeah, I enjoy listening to the horror stories of what's happened.
It really is a horror story. This guy's disgusting.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a roller coaster. I was not prepared for some of that.
Yeah, I apologize. Maybe I should have given a trigger warning.
No, it's okay.
But yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us once again. I am Janus Dead.
I'm Madsters.
And we'll see you next week.
Thank you.